What if your company's wellness program inspired people to show up, engage, and stick around no matter where they are in the world? Today, I'm joined by Tim, the founder of a workplace wellness platform that makes waves across more than 20 countries. Tim is here to share what sparked his global vision and how his team maintains consistency at scale and why genuine human connection still prevails in a digital world. If you're curious about what sets top wellness platforms apart and how companies are building healthier, more connected teams, this episode is for you. Tim, for those just getting to know you, what inspired the creation of your workplace wellness platform and what sets it apart from others in this space?
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for having me along today. Look, my personal passion behind what I do is exactly built on lived experience. I've been through some pretty tough times in my life. We won't have time to dive into those sorts of things today, but I spiraled into some pretty dark places. And as I started coming out of that with support from friends, family, psychologists, I realized I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to make a difference, that the idea of people being in the extreme mental distress that I was in at the time was a horrid thought, to be fair, and I didn't want anyone to be in that space. So my goal, therefore, is to try and help elevate people. And the advantage of working within workplaces is that I can have quite a broad reach. Rather than when trying to work with people one-on-one, I can reach a lot of people with real meaningful, credible, sound guidance that helps elevate their daily lifestyle practices. What really sets us apart, we're totally holistic. We cover anything and everything that contributes to building and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We have a range of really practical tools that people actually use. And so therefore, because there's utilization, the reporting and metrics that we provide back to an organization are excellent and really help an organization understand the needs of their people and then potentially target those.
Great. So you're operating across 20 plus countries. What does global delivery really look like in practice, and how do you maintain consistency while scaling?
Yeah, yeah. It's to be fair, it's actually quite difficult in as much as we're a small team, primarily based in New Zealand and Australia. So our global footprint means that sometimes we work really uncomfortable hours. We have to give consideration to what we're delivering within organisations that's specific to the hemisphere or country. So, for example, if I was trying to deliver immunity content at the same time we would in New Zealand into America, it would have zero relevance because you'd be slap bang in the middle of summer. So you've got to make sure that with each country, we're giving consideration to their needs and aligning things like the health days that that country would consider to make sure that it's relevant and practical at the time, to make sure that the delivery of content when we push things out goes at the right time, that we give cultural considerations. So for an example, within New Zealand, our Indigenous people, the Māori people, we create content that is considered through what's known as a Te Ao Māori lens. So to make sure that we are giving consideration to that. So in each country we enter, when we entered into the Australian market, for example, we then wanted to give consideration to First Nations Aboriginal people and their well-being needs and history, if you like. So there's a whole heap of things that we need to consider when we're delivering a live speaker series. We need to be able to deliver it at times that will work in those various countries. So heaps to consider when you're a relatively small team. I always recommend for our team, we've sort of focused initially around the New Zealand, Australia market, because that was obviously our easiest. And as we've expanded, we're now at a point where we're needing to scale out into other countries.
So you mentioned incredibly high engagement and retention rates. What are the top reasons clients stick with you year after year?
Yeah, the program that we have, I mentioned it's already really holistic, but we also give consideration to all the people in the organization. And what I mean by that is we consider the organizational well-being, as well as supporting the person who's going to be driving it, as well as supporting staff members, and we give access to their family members too. So when an organization is working with us, we're considering all the components, the organizational well-being being things like delivering back on metrics and data, and we give some really awesome data on that. And then the individual well-being, but making sure that whoever is driving it has support and guidance to be able to do that in a really meaningful way. We've also worked really hard to keep it at a price point that is affordable for organizations of any size. So, in order for us to deliver really meaningful, credible support, and with we have an incredible breadth and depth of content and tools. But in order for us to do that, we've scaled our pricing system. So, for a small organization, they pay a higher per head price. For a really large organization, it can become very affordable per person. Of course, the overall cost ends up increasing, but just making sure that it's relevant. Excuse me. Sorry, slight cough there. The other thing that we work really hard to doing is, so the person that we normally communicate with, they're often not well-being focused in the organization. There are not that many organizations, or until you get over a certain size, that have a dedicated well-being person who can focus all their time and energy on that concept and how to implement that within the organization. So what our program enables a business to do is focus on their other components of the role. They might be health and safety, they might be human resources, whichever department they're working, they have a number of other key responsibilities that they need to consider. So our program manages the day-to-day wellbeing component. If they don't have time or capacity, they don't have to do much because we run so much of it. However, we do get the best results when we have someone who is actively engaged on that side who can help us drive it within the organization too. So it just means that they can choose the balance. If they're really busy for 2 or 3 months and they really have no time, they don't have to. Whereas, of course, when they do, they'll generally see higher engagement. But I think
So
the other thing,
sounds like
sorry,
you got flexibility. Yeah, no, sounds like you
yeah,
got some flexibility there. That's good for that one.
yeah, yeah, and but the other thing that's really notoriously difficult in the well-being space to track and measure is actually, or is to provide metrics. A lot of the metrics that a business will work with internally focus on attrition or sickness or those sorts of considerations. What we're able to deliver to an organization is the key topics of interest that a business is engaging, or the people within their business are engaging with, and the concerns that they have, the emotional state or the psychological state of their workforce, and a whole heap of other metrics that are quite difficult to measure. So in terms of proving viability or return on investment of a wellbeing initiative, we can give that to the leadership team.
So many organizations, I'm sure they hesitate to adopt digital wellness platforms, well-being platforms. What are some myths or hesitations you regularly hear? Or how do you help teams?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that we get is that potentially the same information could be found on Google. So, I mean, we all use Google. It has its place, of course. The way we overcome it is that the reality with Google is anyone can put anything onto the internet. So it hasn't been vetted. Oftentimes there's misinformation or downright inaccurate information. Our platform enables a business to provide a expert created, heavily researched, completely from a solid scientific research perspective, content and tools that can actually drive positive change. If someone has high health literacy, then perhaps they would be able to identify which pieces on the internet are accurate and get that advice. But for most people, even some who think they have really good health literacy, actually there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so we help cut through that and make sure that if a business is providing wellbeing support, that it's going to be credible, scientifically based, meaningful, and actually can drive genuine outcomes. Another concern that is often raised is whether or not the staff within a business will engage with the platform. And whilst it is impossible for me to go into a business and guarantee a certain level of uptake, because it still is reliant on individuals utilizing it, our program has been designed to ensure that people engage with it really well, and our engagement levels are super high. We depending on which metric you look at, we range between 56 to 89% average utilization, which is super high. Most people working within this space are lucky if they achieve about 30 to 40%. That would be considered a high result. So that really, really helps you when you can go in and show the metrics of average utilization that we're getting. And I can generally assume based on that that a business would be able to get great utilization rates. Probably the only other one I'll highlight, because I mean, I could go on, there's plenty of them out there, is that a lot of businesses feel that because they have an EAP, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that is, but an employee assistance program, typically a service that is designed for employees who are in a risk state, really struggling mentally, struggling with their relationships, those sorts of things. They provide counseling services and a range of other things. But sometimes a business will think that that's enough. But the reality is that even if the ERP has an app associated with it, the apps normally are tack on secondary consideration to their core service, which they do extremely well, which is counseling and support and those sorts of services, but tends to only reach between 5 to 10% of the organization, because hopefully in any business you don't have more than that in a high risk zone. And what we focus on is trying to make sure that we're giving people preventative tools and support so that they actually don't end up in that place, so that they can look after their health now, and we can motivate them, guide them to being able to making better choices.
God, I love it. So how do you tailor support for like different communication cultures? Say like tech companies, maybe they're using Slack versus like distributed teams with limited tools, like digital tools.
Yeah. So typically that's part of the information gathering process when we're talking to an organization to identify whether or not we're even the right fit for them, because, every organization needs to choose something that will best suit their people. And we do tend to find that emails are typically one of the most effective methods. Most organizations will utilize those. Some companies have other communication channels in place. And in those instances, then we can just work with them to making sure that it's delivered through an appropriate channel that's likely to get the best uptake. I mean, if they've got an established communications channel that they know is working, of course, we want to lean into that, because then we will get the best possible uptake from staff also. Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's probably
And you
right.
kind of, yeah, and you had mentioned EAPs earlier, but like you've partnered with EAPs and others before. What have you learned about aligning the incentives and getting traction with the channel partners?
Yeah, so when working with channel partners, it can sometimes be a touch difficult to be truly transparent, because you both have a different business model with different business objectives, and so truly aligning those um, I can't think of the correct word, but connecting the platforms into a way that they're integrated. There we go, got there.
Integrate.
So integrating platforms can be really quite difficult, and before you've been able to identify whether or not there's actually validity to a partnership. So I tend to take a limited risk approach. Where in the first instance, for at least the first few clients, we work as separate entities under the same banner to see and make sure that our mutual goals and our sometimes not so mutual goals will actually work hand in hand. And when doing that, it can be quite great bringing on, once it's identified as an effective partnership, it can be really wonderful, because what that can do is it can increase your market opportunity. It can extend leads to companies that potentially you wouldn't have otherwise got access to. They can warm refer, we can warm refer, and then potentially build on that relationship in a way that can really elevate your business a little bit faster, relying slightly less on the sales component, because you've actually got this lovely warm introduction.
Yeah. So let's say a decision maker is listening and they're curious what type of company is an ideal fit to get started with your.
Yeah, I mean, we're reasonably industry agnostic. We currently work with anything from law firms and engineering firms and IT solutions through to religious organizations, charities, meat packers, forestries, fisheries. We've got a really, really broad range. That being said, we have better engagement with an organization that is computer savvy. So when you have an organization that is not connected digitally, and that is often sort of the more factory or outdoor sort of field
Or
based
like out of the field.
workforce.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a bit more challenging to get them engaged, but it's not impossible. We still have really fantastic results. They're just a slower build. It requires um, a closer working relationship with the wellbeing lead in order to be able to deliver the results that we want to be able to do. But we basically are perfect for any business that is looking to support their staff in meaningful ways, to include family members, and that are looking to encourage staff to make better choices associated with their health. And not necessarily perfect, because it doesn't really exist anyway, but better choices and influence positive, long-term, sustainable change to their health habits.
Where are you hoping to expand next, whether it's geography or partnerships or new use case studies? Yeah.
So the next expansion for us is likely to be North America or the UK, and that's where we're working to build. There's a couple of reasons for that. Geographically, they're great locations. They're English speaking, so that makes my life a lot easier. And they're huge markets, so they're a great place to have people based for our global domination, if you like.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. So, and finally, if someone wants to explore what a partnership could look like, what's the best way for them to reach you?
The best way is directly on my email, tim@myeverydaywellbeing.com, or otherwise visit My Everyday Wellbeing. I'm happy to talk with anyone directly, or alternatively, depending on my current busyness, I would refer through to one of our very competent team members to have that initial discussion too. But we would, in that instance, offer a free trial access so that a company could explore what it would look like for their team.
Excellent. All right. This has been great. Thank you so much, Tim.
Such a pleasure. Thanks for having me along.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Wellness Growth Show. If today's conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories, strategies, and insights from the front lines of wellness innovation. If you're a founder, operator, or health leader exploring growth into institutional markets and have a story worth telling, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out directly on LinkedIn or YouTube. And if you found this valuable, share it with a peer or post it online. You never know who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay well, keep moving, and keep building what matters.